They buried the truth with him. But 3 nights later, the phone rang. The entire town stood in silence as the coffin slowly disappeared into the ground. People whispered prayers, some wiped away tears, others avoided looking at the widow standing alone near the grave. Everyone believed the same thing. The truth had been buried with him. But 3 nights later, at exactly 2:17 a.m., a phone began to ring in the darkness, and the name on the screen made her blood run cold, because the call was coming from his number. The man they had just buried. CTA. If you enjoy powerful and emotional stories like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. Part 1. The town of Ridgewood was the kind of place where nothing ever happened. Quiet streets, small houses with white fences, and people who believed they knew everything about their neighbors. So when Daniel Carter died, the story spread through town in less than an hour. They said it was an accident, a late-night drive, a wet road, a car that lost control near the forest highway. By the time the police arrived, the car was crushed against an old oak tree. Daniel Carter was already dead. At least, that's what everyone was told. Daniel had never been popular in Ridgewood. He was quiet. Strange, some people said. He worked nights repairing electronics in a tiny workshop behind his house. Most evenings, the light in his garage stayed on until sunrise. Neighbors complained about the noise. Others whispered something worse. They said Daniel knew things he shouldn't know. About people, about secrets, about what really happened in Ridgewood when nobody was watching. 3 months before the accident, Daniel had gone to the police station. He carried a small black folder in his hands. Inside were documents, photos, USB drives. He asked to speak with Detective Harris. The officer at the desk looked at him with annoyance. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Daniel said quietly. "But this is important." Harris eventually agreed to see him. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes. When Daniel left the office, his face looked pale, like a man who had just realized something terrible. The next day, rumors started spreading through town. People said Daniel had gone crazy. They said he was accusing powerful people of things that made no sense. Corruption, disappearances, money that moved through fake companies. Detective Harris told everyone the same thing. Just a paranoid man with too much time on his hands. And the town believed him. Because believing Daniel would mean something far worse. 2 weeks later, Daniel stopped talking to anyone. He kept working in his garage. But the lights stayed on even longer than before, sometimes until morning, sometimes all night. One neighbor said she heard him arguing with someone. But when police checked the house, Daniel was completely alone. Then came the night of the accident. Heavy rain, an empty highway, and Daniel Carter's car wrapped around a tree. The police report was simple: driver error, case closed. The funeral was held 3 days later. The entire town attended, not because they cared, but because Ridgewood loved watching tragedies. People stood around the grave whispering, "Poor man lost his mind. He probably drank too much." Sad story. Only one person didn't speak: Daniel's wife, Emily. She stood near the coffin, without crying, without moving, watching, like someone waiting for something. When the ceremony ended, people slowly returned to their cars. The cemetery became quiet again. Wind moved through the trees. The fresh soil on the grave looked dark under the gray sky. Emily stayed behind. She walked slowly toward the headstone. Her fingers trembled as she placed a small object on the ground. Daniel's old phone. The police had returned it to her after the accident. They said it was damaged, useless. But Emily had charged it anyway, just in case. For 3 nights, nothing happened. The phone stayed silent on the kitchen table. Emily barely slept. Something about Daniel's death felt wrong. Too clean, too fast, too convenient. She kept remembering the last thing he told her before leaving the house that night. "Emily, if something happens to me, don't trust anyone." She had laughed then. Now those words echoed in her mind, like a warning. On the 3rd night, Emily finally fell asleep on the couch. The house was silent. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, and the digital clock on the wall slowly changed. 2:15 a.m., 2:16 a.m., 2:17 a.m. Then suddenly, the phone began to ring, a cold sound that sliced through the darkness of the room. Emily's eyes opened instantly. Her heart started pounding. The screen lit up. She looked down at the caller ID, and the air seemed to disappear from the room, because the name on the screen said Daniel Carter, the man they had buried 3 days ago. For a moment, Emily thought she was still dreaming. The phone kept ringing on the table. Once, twice, 3 times. The name on the screen did not change. Daniel Carter. Her hands started shaking. "That's impossible," she whispered. She remembered the police officer handing her the phone in a small plastic bag after the funeral. "It was found in the car," he had said. "Probably damaged by the crash." But now the screen was glowing in the darkness of the living room, and the phone was ringing. Emily slowly picked it up. Her heart was beating so loudly it felt like the entire house could hear it. The call was still active. For a second she hesitated. Then she pressed accept. "Hello?" she said quietly. Silence, not even static. Just the faint sound of wind. Emily swallowed. "Daniel?" Suddenly, a strange noise came through the speaker, like something moving against metal, scraping, then breathing. Slow, heavy breathing. Emily's body froze. "Who is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. More silence. Then a whisper, so quiet she almost didn't hear it. "Emily." Her blood turned cold. That voice. It sounded like Daniel, but weaker, broken, like someone speaking through pain. "Daniel?" she gasped. The whisper came again. "Listen carefully." Emily grabbed the phone with both hands. "Where are you? What's happening?" But instead of answering, the voice said something that made her stomach twist. "They're lying." A loud crack of static interrupted the call. Emily pressed the phone harder to her ear. "Who's lying? Daniel, talk to me." The whisper returned. The accident wasn't real. Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" But before the voice could finish, the call suddenly ended. The screen went dark. Emily stared at the phone. Her mind raced. This made no sense. Daniel was dead. She had seen the coffin. She had watched it go into the ground. And yet, she had just heard his voice. Her first instinct was to call the police, but then she remembered Daniel's last words. "Don't trust anyone, even Detective Harris, especially Detective Harris." Emily looked again at the phone. Her hands were still shaking. Maybe someone was playing a cruel prank? Maybe someone had stolen Daniel's number. Maybe. The phone suddenly vibrated again. Another notification. But this time it wasn't a call. It was a message. Emily slowly opened it. There was no text. Only a single audio file. Her finger hovered above the play button. For a moment she thought about deleting it, about pretending none of this had happened. But something inside her refused. She pressed play. At first, the recording sounded like noise, wind, footsteps, a car door slamming. Then Daniel's voice appeared, clearer than before. This wasn't a whisper anymore. It sounded like a recording made before the accident. "Emily, if you're hearing this, something went wrong." Her eyes filled with tears. "Daniel," she whispered. The recording continued. "I tried to give the evidence to the police, but Harris didn't even look at it. I think he already knew." Emily felt a cold wave run through her chest. "What evidence?" she whispered. Daniel's voice continued. "There are people in this town who are hiding something terrible. Missing money. Missing people. Everything leads back to the same place." A short pause. Then he said something that made Emily's hands tremble. "The old factory near the forest." Emily knew the place. Everyone in Ridgewood knew it. An abandoned industrial building closed 20 years ago after a fire. Nobody went there anymore. Kids were even warned to stay away. Daniel's voice on the recording grew tense. "I copied everything to a drive, documents, videos, names." Emily's heart began racing. "If anything happens to me..." The recording crackled. "Don't trust the police." Another pause. Then the final words. "The truth isn't buried with me." Silence. The recording ended. Emily sat frozen on the couch. The house felt colder than before. Her mind replayed Daniel's words again and again. The accident wasn't real. Don't trust the police. The factory near the forest. Outside, the wind grew stronger. Branches scratched against the windows. Emily slowly stood up. Her decision came suddenly. If Daniel had risked his life for this, she needed to know the truth. But as she walked toward the window, a pair of headlights suddenly appeared outside the house. A car had stopped across the street. The engine was still running. And inside the car, someone was watching the house, waiting. Emily froze near the window. The headlights from the car across the street cut through the darkness, like two cold eyes watching her house. The engine was still running. Whoever was inside had no intention of leaving. Emily slowly moved the curtain just a few centimeters. Her heart pounded in her chest. She tried to see the driver's face, but the interior of the car was too dark. Just a silhouette behind the steering wheel. Watching. Waiting. "How long have they been there?" she whispered. Then something even more disturbing happened. The car's headlights suddenly turned off. Now the vehicle was nothing more than a black shape in the night. Invisible. Except Emily knew it was still there, and whoever sat inside knew she had seen them. Her phone vibrated again. Emily almost dropped it from fear. Another message. This time, a photo. She opened it slowly. The picture showed an old building surrounded by trees, broken windows, rusty metal gates, graffiti covering the walls. Emily recognized it immediately. The abandoned factory near the forest. Daniel's message appeared below the photo. Only 3 words. "Go there tonight." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Daniel, are you really alive?" she whispered. But deep inside, she knew something worse. Even if Daniel was dead, Someone clearly wanted her to find the truth he had discovered. Emily looked again toward the dark car outside. The silhouette inside hadn't moved, watching her house, waiting for something, waiting for her. Suddenly, a terrifying thought entered her mind. What if they were there because of the phone call? Because someone knew she had just heard Daniel's recording? She turned off every light in the house. The living room instantly fell into darkness. From the street, it now looked like no one was awake. Emily moved quietly toward the back door. Her hands were shaking so badly, she struggled to unlock it. The cold night air rushed inside when the door opened. She stepped outside silently and closed it behind her. The forest road began just behind her backyard. If she stayed close to the trees, the car on the street wouldn't see her leave. The wind moved through the branches above her. Leaves whispered in the darkness. Emily walked faster. Her shoes crunched softly on the gravel path. The deeper she moved into the forest, the darker everything became. After 10 minutes, she reached her car, parked near the dirt road behind the house. She unlocked it quickly and jumped inside. Her hands gripped the steering wheel. For a moment, she hesitated. "Am I really doing this?" she whispered. But Daniel's voice echoed again in her mind. "The truth isn't buried with me." Emily started the engine. The car headlights lit up the narrow forest road. Then she drove. The factory stood about 20 minutes outside Ridgewood. The road leading there was almost never used. Old street lamps flickered weakly along the highway. The deeper Emily drove into the forest, the quieter the world became. No other cars, no houses, only trees and darkness, and the strange feeling that someone might be following her. She looked in the rearview mirror. Empty road, but her heart still refused to calm down. Finally, the factory appeared through the trees. The building looked even worse than she remembered. The tall chimney leaned slightly to one side. Broken windows stared like empty eye sockets. Rust covered the metal gates. Emily parked near the entrance and turned off the engine. The silence was heavy, oppressive. The wind moved through the broken structures, making low, haunting sounds. For a moment she considered turning around and leaving. But then she remembered something. Daniel had risked his life for whatever he found here. If she left now, his death would mean nothing. Emily grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out of the car. The light beam cut through the darkness. Dust floated in the cold air. The factory gate stood slightly open. Someone had been here recently. The metal creaked as she pushed it further. The sound echoed through the empty building. Emily stepped inside. The smell of rust and old smoke filled the air. Her flashlight illuminated old machines covered with dust. Broken pipes, collapsed walls. Everything looked abandoned. But something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Like the building was holding its breath. Emily walked deeper into the factory. Her footsteps echoed against the concrete floor. Then suddenly, her flashlight revealed something on the ground. Footprints. Fresh footprints in the dust. Large. Heavy. Someone had walked here not long ago, and they were leading toward a staircase going underground. Emily felt a wave of fear run through her body. "Daniel," she whispered. Her heart pounded as she approached the stairs. Darkness waited below. Cold. Silent. Unknown. Then suddenly, A loud metallic clang echoed behind her. Emily spun around. Her flashlight beam shook across the empty factory floor. For a second she saw nothing. Then, a shadow moved between the machines. Someone else was inside the factory. And they were not alone. Emily's heart nearly stopped. The metallic clang still echoed through the factory walls. For a few seconds she couldn't move. Her flashlight trembled in her hand, the beam sliding across broken machines and piles of rusted metal. "Hello?" she called carefully. Her voice sounded small in the huge, empty building. No answer. Only the sound of the wind pushing through broken windows. Emily swallowed. Maybe it was just a piece of metal falling. Maybe the old building was shifting. But then, a second sound. Footsteps. Slow. Somewhere between the rows of machines. Emily quickly turned off her flashlight. Darkness swallowed the factory instantly. Her breathing became shallow as she stood completely still. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, everything was silent again. Then a male voice echoed across the room. "Emily Carter?" Her stomach dropped. The voice sounded familiar. Too familiar. The flashlight slipped from her fingers and rolled across the floor, turning on again. Its beam stopped at a pair of black boots. Emily slowly raised her eyes. The man stepped forward into the light. Detective Harris. Her chest tightened. "You," she whispered. The detective looked completely calm, almost amused. "Well," he said slowly, "I was wondering how long it would take you to come here." Emily felt the world spinning around her. "You followed me." Harris shrugged. "Actually, we've been watching your house all night." Emily's hands clenched. "So the accident, it wasn't real." Harris smiled faintly. "You're smarter than your husband." Those words hit her like a knife. "Where is he?" she shouted. The detective tilted his head. "I told the town he died in the crash." "That's not what I asked." For the first time, Harris's smile disappeared. The factory suddenly felt colder. "Your husband made a mistake," he said quietly. "He started digging into things that didn't concern him." Emily's voice shook. "What things?" Harris walked slowly around her. His footsteps echoed in the empty building. "Money? Deals? People who prefer to stay invisible?" Emily remembered Daniel's recording. Missing money. Missing people. "This town," Harris continued, "looks peaceful on the outside, but behind the scenes, it's very profitable." Her blood turned cold. "You killed him." Harris stopped walking. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he sighed. "Let's just say, Daniel refused to stop asking questions." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You murdered him!" The detective's expression hardened. "No, your husband died because he didn't know when to stay quiet." Emily's gaze moved toward the staircase leading underground. "Is he down there?" she asked quietly. Harris noticed immediately. His eyes followed hers. Then he smiled again. "That depends," he said. "On what?" "On whether you're ready to see the truth." Suddenly, two more men appeared from the shadows. Large, silent, both wearing dark jackets. Emily stepped back. Fear gripped her chest. "You're not leaving this factory tonight," Harris said calmly. Her mind raced. 3 men. No weapons. No way out. But then she remembered something. Daniel had told her to come here, which meant he must have known this moment could happen. "Daniel left something here, didn't he?" she said. The detective's eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting," Emily continued. "He knew you'd come after him." For the first time, Harris looked uncertain. What exactly did he tell you? Emily took a step toward the basement stairs. Enough. One of the men moved forward to grab her, but suddenly, a loud beeping sound echoed from somewhere deep inside the factory. Everyone froze. The noise repeated again. Beep, beep, beep. Harris turned his head sharply. What is that? Emily's heart started racing again, because she recognized the sound. It was coming from Daniel's phone in her pocket. She slowly pulled it out. The screen showed a message, a timer counting down. 0 hours, 1 minute, 27 seconds. Harris's face turned pale. Give me the phone, he said immediately. Emily looked at the screen. Another message appeared below the timer. From Daniel. Only one sentence. If they find you, the truth will find everyone. Emily looked back at Harris, and for the first time, the detective looked afraid. The beeping echoed through the factory like a ticking bomb. Beep, beep, beep. Everyone stared at the phone in Emily's hand. The timer kept counting down. 0 hours, 1 minute, 3 seconds. Detective Harris's calm mask was gone. Give me the phone, he said again, this time sharper. Emily stepped back. No. The two men behind Harris moved closer. The detective raised his hand, stopping them. Easy, he muttered. His eyes never left the screen. Emily, listen to me. Whatever your husband told you, he was desperate. He didn't know what he was doing. Emily laughed bitterly. You're scared? Harris's jaw tightened. I'm trying to help you stay alive. By killing me, like you killed him? For a second, the detective didn't answer. The timer changed again. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 47 seconds. The beeping grew faster. Harris's eyes suddenly darted toward the basement stairs, then back to the phone. Realization flashed across his face. Where did he hide it? He demanded. Emily felt a strange calm spread through her chest. You mean the truth? Harris stepped closer. No, I mean the drive. Emily's heart skipped. Daniel had mentioned a drive in the recording. Documents, videos, names, everything that could destroy them. You won't find it, she said. Harris's voice dropped to a whisper. Emily, your husband was smarter than you think. The timer continued. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 35 seconds. He didn't just collect evidence, Harris said slowly. He built a dead man's switch. Emily frowned. What does that mean? Harris gave a dry laugh. It means if Daniel ever stopped checking in with a certain system. His eyes returned to the phone. Everything he found would automatically be sent somewhere. Emily's breath caught. To who? Harris's expression darkened. Everyone. The phone beeped again. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 26 seconds. Emily's pulse started racing. You mean the police? Harris shook his head. Bigger than that. His voice sounded tense now. News agencies, federal investigators, anonymous servers. Emily felt the weight of Daniel's plan hitting her all at once. If the timer reaches 0, Harris finished the sentence quietly. Every secret this town buried will explode across the world. The two men behind Harris exchanged nervous looks. One of them spoke. Boss, we should leave. Harris ignored him. His eyes stayed locked on Emily. Where's the drive? He asked. Emily shook her head. I don't know. That part was actually true. Daniel had never told her. The detective studied her face carefully, trying to decide if she was lying. The timer kept falling. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 18 seconds. Beep, beep, beep. Finally, Harris spoke again. All right, he sighed. What? We're going downstairs. Emily stared at him. Why? Harris pointed toward the staircase. Because Daniel worked here for months before he died. Emily felt her stomach twist. Installing things. Like what? Harris gave a thin smile. Cameras, hidden servers, backup systems. Emily suddenly realized something terrifying. This factory is where he stored everything, Harris finished. The timer hit 0 hours, 0 minutes, 12 seconds. Move, Harris ordered. One of the men grabbed Emily's arm. They forced her toward the basement stairs. The metal steps creaked under their weight as they descended. The air below was colder, damp, and filled with the smell of old concrete. Emily's flashlight flickered again as they reached the bottom. Then the beam illuminated something unexpected. A room, but not an abandoned one. Tables, computers, cables running along the walls, screens glowing softly in the darkness. Emily gasped. Daniel had built an entire secret workstation beneath the factory. The timer on the phone reached 0 hours, 0 minutes, 7 seconds. Harris rushed to the computers. "Find the main server," he shouted to the men. They began tearing through the equipment. Emily stared at the screens. Lines of data were already moving across them. Files uploading. Messages sending. Daniel's plan was already in motion. The timer dropped too. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 4 seconds. Harris slammed his fist on a keyboard. "Stop it!" But the screens kept flashing. More files transferring. More names appearing. Emily saw something on one of the monitors. A message, written by Daniel. "If you are seeing this, the truth is already free." The timer hit. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 1 second. The final beep echoed through the underground room. Then the phone screen went dark. For a moment, nobody moved. The factory was silent. Then every computer screen suddenly lit up at once. And the same message appeared everywhere. Upload complete. Harris slowly turned toward Emily. His face looked completely different now. Not confident, not calm, just furious. "You have no idea what you've done," he whispered. But Emily realized something, for the first time since Daniel died. The detective looked like a man who had already lost. For a few seconds, the underground room remained completely silent. The computers hummed quietly. On every screen, the same message glowed in cold white letters. Upload complete. Emily slowly exhaled. Daniel had done it. Whatever he had discovered, it was no longer hidden. It was already out in the world. Detective Harris stared at the screens as if they had just pronounced his sentence. "You idiot," he muttered. Emily looked at him calmly. "No," she said quietly. "He was the smartest man in this town." Harris turned toward her, rage burning in his eyes. "You think this ends here?" Emily didn't answer, because suddenly, from far above them, a faint sound echoed through the factory. At first it was distant, almost unnoticeable, but then it grew louder. Sirens, police sirens, many of them, approaching fast. The two men near Harris exchanged terrified looks. "Boss," Harris clenched his fists. "This is impossible," he whispered. But the sirens kept getting closer, louder, closer, closer. Emily realized what Daniel had planned. The moment the files were uploaded, the evidence must have reached authorities outside Ridgewood. Real investigators. People Harris couldn't control. Suddenly, loud voices echoed from above. "Police! Nobody move!" Heavy footsteps ran across the factory floor. Doors slammed open. Metal clanged. The two men panicked instantly. "We're finished!" One of them ran toward the stairs, but before he could reach them, armed officers stormed down the staircase. Down, on the ground. Flashlights filled the basement with blinding light. Harris froze. His empire had collapsed in less than a minute. Emily stepped aside as officers surrounded the room. One of them approached her carefully. "Ma'am, are you Emily Carter?" She nodded slowly. The officer's expression softened. "We received a massive data package tonight." He glanced at the computers. "It contains years of evidence." Emily's chest tightened. "From Daniel." The officer nodded again. "Yes." Another officer grabbed Harris and forced him to the ground. Handcuffs snapped around his wrists. For the first time in the entire night. The detective looked completely defeated. As they led Harris away, he stopped beside Emily. For a moment he said nothing. Then he leaned closer. "You still don't understand," he whispered. Emily looked at him without fear. "What?" Harris smiled faintly. "Your husband wasn't just exposing us." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" But the officers pushed Harris forward before he could finish. He disappeared up the stairs. The basement slowly filled with investigators. Computers were photographed, equipment packed into evidence bags. The truth Daniel had uncovered was now impossible to hide. Emily stepped back against the wall. The adrenaline was fading. Exhaustion hit her all at once. One officer approached her again. "Ma'am, there's something you should see." He handed her a small object they had found near one of the computers. A USB drive. Daniel's handwriting was scratched into the metal. For Emily. Her hands trembled as she plugged it into one of the remaining computers. A video file appeared, time-stamped only a few hours before Daniel's accident. Emily pressed play. Daniel's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, but calm. "Hi, Em," he said softly. Emily covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. "I hope you're watching this somewhere safe." He paused. "If you are, it means my plan worked." Emily whispered, "Daniel." He smiled faintly. "I know you're probably scared right now, but I also know something else." His voice became gentler. "You're the bravest person I've ever known." Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks. Daniel continued, "I couldn't tell you everything before. It was too dangerous." He looked directly into the camera. "The people running Ridgewood, they've been hiding crimes for years. Money laundering, disappearances, even murders." Emily remembered Harris's words. Missing people. Daniel took a deep breath. "So I built something they couldn't stop." He tapped the camera. "The moment they killed me, everything would be released." Emily felt her heart break. "You knew they would kill you." Daniel's eyes softened. "Yes," he said quietly. "I knew the risk." He leaned closer to the camera. But the truth was worth it. Daniel's expression became serious one last time. "Emily, if you're watching this, please don't remember me as someone who died." He smiled through tired eyes. "Remember me as someone who finally made them tell the truth." The video ended. Emily stood in the underground room, tears falling silently. Around her, investigators continued collecting evidence. The truth Daniel fought for was finally free, and nothing in Ridgewood would ever be the same again. Sometimes the truth is buried by powerful people, but the courage of one person can uncover everything. Daniel Carter lost his life, but he gave the world something stronger than fear: the truth. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel for more powerful and emotional stories. Because sometimes the quietest heroes leave behind the loudest truths.